Welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobby Grenier, your trusted guide to navigating the world of real estate in Maine. Get ready to debunk mortgage myths, unravel real estate mysteries, and learn tips to avoid costly mistakes. Whether you're an industry pro, an overwhelmed buyer, confused seller, or simply curious about life in Maine, this is the podcast for you. Welcome. You have found the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast, and I'm your host, Bobby Grenier. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and spending some time with me today. Okay, my friends, everyone is thinking it but may not want to say it, and I'm here to keep it real, so I'm going to be the one. In this episode, I'm going to give you 5 things your title or closing company really want you to know but might not want to tell you. But before I jump into it, I want to give you a reminder that this podcast is about growth and about sharing information amongst industry partners and professionals. And because I want you all to be the rock star real estate agents that I know you can be, I promise that if you listen to what I say and put this information into practice, you'll be able to provide your clients with a much nicer and smoother, and most importantly, stress-free, or at the very least, less stressful experience. This will take your customer service game, title knowledge, and professional practice to the next level. So let's get started. First up, what exactly is being sold shouldn't be a guessing game. When you are listing a property, find out exactly what your seller intends to sell. And it might sound silly, but I promise you, this can be a problem. This means please get the information on the contract correct. I share office space with one of our title attorneys, and when I hear her groan, I know it's probably because we're about to play our favorite game. We even have a bit, and I won't subject you to my singing game show music, but we call it everyone's favorite game, What Are They Selling? Honestly, I have a bit, and she just kind of tolerates it, but all kidding aside, the way to win that game is one simple word, and that's communication. Give us all the information up front, and if you're waiting for information from a surveyor or maybe the seller's attorney, just tell us that. Our time is valuable, as is yours as a real estate agent, as is your client's time. So share that information up front to save us a phone call or an email, and in some cases just going around and around in circles to find out, oh yeah, the surveyor should have that information next week. Here's a pro tip. Always check that the deed reference that you put on the contract is correct. Don't rely solely on tax information from an assessor's card because it's not always accurate or even up to date. And the deed is the most reliable source for the legal description that we need and gives the boundaries of the property. So give us all the relevant details like easements, additional parcels. Make sure it's all clearly identified. Is more than one parcel being conveyed? List all deed references on the purchase and sale agreement. So this includes that extra strip of land that's being sold with the property, the easement or right-of-way that is conveying to the buyers. We need to know it all. Doing this research up front can save so many headaches down the road. And I'm not asking you to do a title search that clearly is not your role or responsibility, but at least take a look at the deed as a starting point and respond promptly when we ask questions. The bottom line is that we cannot do a proper search on a property if we don't know what is actually conveying and what property that we are actually searching. Another thing we need to know is if only part of the property is being conveyed. It totally baffles me when we get a contract where it's explicitly noted that only part of the property is conveyed, and then it's like total crickets about what part you're referring to. If some survey work has been done, provide it with the order. Do you have a new legal description? Share that with us, please, or a proposed deed with a new legal description. We need to know all of that information. So here's another pro tip. Title companies do not write narrative legal descriptions. Stop asking us to do this. The legal description needs to be written by a licensed surveyor based on their survey work and their field work. And sending us a sketch or a plan when we're asking for a narrative legal description, it doesn't matter how many times you send it, it doesn't do the trick. We need that written out narrative legal description. Here are a few other things to watch out for. Is the property tax acquired? Meaning, did the seller get the property from a municipality because the previous owner or owners of the property did not pay their real estate taxes. This can be a problem in regards to title insurability. So if you find this is the case, reach out to your title company or your title attorney for guidance. Is this family land? There is often a misconception that if property has been in a family for years and generations, then the title search should be easy. And yeah, in some cases, that's the case. But there are times when great-grandpa starts splitting up the land, conveying to relatives, and this is usually without the benefit of any surveying work. Things can get sticky, and in many cases, a survey will need to be consulted or pulled in at that point. This one may get me into trouble, but here goes anyway. Quite often when we reach out to agents for clarification on what is selling, they tell us just to contact or call the seller, which we can do and we will do. But how does this reflect on you with your clients? With just a little research when you are listing the property and submitting a complete and correct contract to the lender and or the title company or closing company, you can be an absolute hero to your clients. You would be surprised to know how many times a seller will say that they had told their agent or explained to their agent a particular circumstance or situation with their property. And in some cases, they will even tell us that they gave their agent survey work and it didn't get passed on to us. So don't be so quick to tell us just to reach out to the seller. Maybe look in your file and see if there are any notes or emails or anything that can give us a heads up before we do reach out to that seller. The call that we hate getting is when months, even years after a transaction has closed, it comes back that the correct property wasn't conveyed, or not all the property was conveyed. Even worse, more property was conveyed than the seller intended. The first thing we do is look at that purchase and sale agreement to see what information was provided on the contract. We rely on this information on the contract not as a suggestion of what might be conveying, but what the seller has agreed to sell and what the buyer plans to receive in return for that agreed purchase price. Misunderstandings, inaccuracies, incomplete information can all lead to delays in the title process and in turn the entire closing process. And nobody wants that, and even worse, the wrong property being conveyed. So take the time to get it right from the start. And if you don't know, ask. Your title company is a resource that you should use during the entire process, not just after the contract has been written. So number 2, next up, who's the seller anyway? It sounds simple, but knowing exactly who has the authority to sell the property is crucial. Here are some points you need to consider. First, is the seller an LLC or a corporation? Make sure you know this, and also who will sign the documents on behalf of the entity. Corporate documents or corporate resolution will be required to verify the signing authority. So make sure that you get that done for your seller. Is it an estate? Ensure that the estate has been probated and a personal representative has been appointed. This representative will need to provide proof of their authority to sell the property, and that will be in the way of a certificate and abstract issued by the probate court, and that will be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Is your seller a trust? Trust documents will need to be provided every time. So ask your seller to get this documentation up front from their trust attorney. Are the sellers in the middle of a divorce? This is a tough one. So yes, this matters because marital property may not be eligible to be conveyed when a divorce action is pending. Sometimes the sellers are recently divorced, and then we need to know, has the abstract of divorce decree been recorded at the Registry of Deeds? Of course, we can check that, but if it has not been, then we need to make sure that that happened. And then once that abstract gets recorded, we check to see if there are any terms on the abstract coming from the divorce judgment, and make sure that any of those terms in regards to the property are satisfied at our closing. Here's another one that you really need to watch out for, and it's are the sellers non-Maine residents? If this is the case, let your sellers know that they're going to need to file for an exemption with the Maine Revenue Service, or they will need to pay a withholding tax of 2.5% of the sales price for properties that are selling for over $100,000. This exemption waiver can take some time, so make sure you let your clients know early in the process. You should plan on a couple of weeks to get this waiver request process done with the Maine Revenue Service so that it's not an issue that may delay closing, or you have an unhappy seller that has to pay that withholding from money withheld from their proceeds. This isn't every type of seller situation, but in my experience, these are the most common. So clear and accurate seller identification keeps the process moving smoothly and can help prevent hiccups during the process. So here's a seller pro tip. Make sure the authorized person signs the sales contract. And I am begging you to provide a mailing address for sellers and buyers too on the contract. I would say about 90% of the contracts that we get have no information. So the section where you give the buyer and seller's mailing address, it's blank. And we actually need this information in processing the file. Okay, moving on to number 3, and that is closing room etiquette. And yes, it's a thing, and if it's not a thing, I'm going to make it a thing. I may need to tell some uncomfortable truths here, but my goal is to make the time at the closing table as smooth and exciting as it should be, not only for buyers and sellers, but also for you as the agent that worked so hard to get your clients to this final step, and this is the grand finale in the home buying or selling journey. So first thing, it seems like we're doing more buyer and seller separate signings. So here's a pro tip. Advise your clients when this happens that there may be a delay in getting their funds, or depending on the situation, the buyer's getting their keys. We try our absolute best for all the documents to come together so we can complete the transaction and everybody can get their money, their keys at that closing table. So if you know the parties are signing separately, find out if this will affect either funding or possession. And I will admit that the assumption goes both ways, and the title company may assume that you know and have communicated to your clients the delays that may occur when parties sign in separate times or in separate locations. So don't be afraid to ask if the parties sign by mail away or remote signing or separate closings. Find out if this will result in any kind of delay that will affect your clients. And here's a big one. Attend your closings whenever possible. And why wouldn't you want to? This is the big moment. And I have to say that the majority of real estate agents do attend their closings, but you'd be surprised by those that don't attend. Or worse yet, come in at the end of the closing to get their commission check. And I feel like this is such a big mistake. The main source of business for real estate agents is repeat and referral business. I don't have to tell you this. And this, in many cases, is your last and your lasting impression on your clients. So why would you pass up this opportunity? Here's another thing we ask at the closing table. Don't create drama where there isn't any. The road to closing can be a bumpy ride, and striking that balance between advocating for your clients and holding everybody on the closing team accountable, which we want you to do, this is very different from throwing those teammates under the bus and worse, keeping it going. Keep it professional and positive for a better experience for your clients and everyone involved. And this is something else that needs to be addressed, and I'm not sure how other closers do it, but I get my seller's documents signed first in the closing so I can focus on signing the buyers, who usually have a lot more documents to sign and will need a lot more focus. I know it's tempting to chat with the seller or other agent or the loan officer to pass the time, and a little of that is okay. I love a friendly closing, but I have had so many times that I've had to pull a buyer in close and speak uncomfortably loudly just to explain their documents, which include important information, and it's a closer's job to make sure they understand what they're signing. This puts the closer in a terrible and cringy position to shush people in the closing room. We don't like doing it. It's awkward. So if you want to chat, maybe go to the lobby or ask if there's another closing room available, or, keep your voices down a little bit. A controversial one, but trust me, all closers are thinking it. So I just ask that you be considerate of all the folks that are signing. And we're going to move on to item number 4 of what every title or closing company wants you to know. The all-powerful title company. Not. While your title company plays such an important role in your transaction, that does not translate to unlimited power on the speed of the process. We can't override the terms of the contract. We can't force surveyors, who, by the way, save us all every day like silent superheroes. But there's a shortage of surveyors. So and they're swamped. So it can take some time if a surveyor needs to be pulled in on a transaction. So we can't make that happen any faster. We can't make lenders' underwriting process go any faster. We can't make the seller that decided to go to Europe for 10 days, the day of their closing, change their trip. We can't force the parties to respond quickly to our requests for information any more than they're willing to do. We can't make buyers and sellers not have issues. We can't make a payoff lender that requires 3 days to get us a payoff figure to do it in an hour when the closing is suddenly moved up. All things beyond our control. And I will say, I have seen my coworkers pull off miracles, but sometimes it just takes the time it takes. Our job is to ensure the title is clear, coordinate the closing with the parties, make sure the terms of the contract are satisfied, make sure we're meeting our lenders' requirements and guidelines, and our underwriters' requirements and guidelines, and of course the title standards of the state of Maine. Your title company is crucial. It's a crucial part of the team and might even be the captain of the team, but definitely do not hold the power that some think that we do. And that leads us nicely right into item number 5, and that is teamwork makes the dream work. And yes, a hokey saying, but 100% accurate. Real estate transactions involve multiple parties. So we have buyers, sellers, real estate agents, lenders, appraisers, surveyors, sellers, attorneys, and of course the title company. And we have to have clear communication, and we need to cooperate and work together. So respond to those requests from your title company promptly. Keep everyone informed of any changes or any issues, and don't hesitate to ask questions if something is unclear. This collaborative approach is the only way that the transaction moves forward smoothly and efficiently. My hope with this episode is that I've armed you with some valuable knowledge to up your game as a real estate agent. It's a competitive business, so it's more important than ever to set yourself apart. And I promise that if you listen to your good friend Bobby when she serves it up straight, this will take you to the next level and help you stand out. Paying attention to these key points, because I'll be honest with you that most don't, will help you do just that. You all have the potential to be absolute rock stars in the industry, and I want to help you get there. This has been the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast with Bobby Grenier. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and will share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to leave a review and follow the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes and not intended as legal advice or representation by myself or any of the guests on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it real.